My name is Rafferty. I am 26 years old, an omega, and for 3 years I kept the only part of myself that mattered hidden in sketchbooks I was too afraid to show anyone. The night Corwin threw me out, I left them behind. Not because I did not love them. Because my hands were shaking so badly that I could not think clearly enough to remember they existed. I grabbed the duffel I had had since college, clothes, charger, the toothbrush from the bathroom, and I walked out of a penthouse that had never felt like mine, carrying exactly what I had arrived with 3 years earlier. Nothing more. Nothing new. I did not realize the sketchbooks were missing until I was sitting on Pax's couch at midnight with my hands empty and the duffel unzipped at my feet. Let me take you back. Before the night I lost them, before the coffee shop, before Leander's card appeared in the front cover of the oldest book, I was already someone who drew because I could not speak. That is the only way I have ever known how to explain it. When something is too heavy for words, my hand moves. It has always been that way. Corwin found that habit impractical. He never said it directly. That was not how he worked. He would watch me draw at the kitchen table and ask what I was working on, and I would show him, and he would look at it for a long moment and then say something careful. That's interesting. Or, you're very dedicated to this. Words that sounded like approval if you did not listen to the silence afterward. Words that meant, this is not what I would choose for you, but I will not say that out loud because I am not cruel enough to be honest. I learned, slowly, to draw when he was not home. I learned to keep the sketchbooks in the bottom drawer of the desk in the second bedroom. The room he called the office, the room I called the room I was not supposed to use. I learned to make my art smaller so it would not take up space he needed for other things. I learned so well that by the time he threw me out, I had forgotten to take them with me. If you have ever stood in a room and understood, in a single second, what you had lost, and also what you had chosen to leave behind, you know what it felt like to sit on Pax's couch at midnight with a duffel bag that did not weigh enough. I did not cry. I sat very still and looked at my hands and thought, I do not know if I am the kind of person who will ever make new ones. Pax came out of his bedroom at 12:30. He is a beta, which means he does not read sent the way an alpha or omega would, but he has known me since we were 19, and that is a different kind of knowing. He looked at me, looked at the duffel, looked at my hands. Where are the sketchbooks? I left them. He waited. I could not carry everything, I said. I chose wrong. He did not say you can go back. He knew I could not. He did not say I am sorry. He knew that would not help. He said, do you want tea or whiskey? Whiskey. He made both. The first week, I did not draw. I sat at Pax's kitchen table every morning after he left for work with a blank sheet of paper in front of me. I put my pen on it. I lifted the pen. I put it down again. Nothing came. I had not gone 4 days without drawing in years. Corwin had made me feel embarrassed about the time it took, but I had always done it. In the margins of notebooks, on napkins, on the back of receipts he would never see. It was not something I decided to do. It was something my hand did when my brain stopped paying attention. Now my brain was paying attention. Too much. Every time I touched the pen, I heard Corwin's careful voice. That's interesting. And I put the pen down again. On the 4th day, Pax came home early and found me staring at the blank page. Raf. I know. How long have you been sitting there? Since you left. He did not say anything. He walked into the kitchen and started making dinner, loud, on purpose, the way he does when he wants to remind me that the world is still running. I sat at the table and watched him chop vegetables and thought about the sketchbooks. 3 years of work. 3 years of proof that the person I was before Corwin still existed. I did not know if I would ever see them again. I picked up the pen. My hand moved. It was not a line. It was not a shape. It was just movement. A curve. A hesitation. Another curve. My hand remembering what it knew even when I did not. I drew for an hour. I did not look at what I had made. I just let my hand find its way back to the page, one mark at a time, slowly, like a person learning to walk again after a long stillness. When I stopped, Pax put a plate of food beside me and said, "There. You're still here." I did not know if he meant me or the drawing. Both, I think. A week later, I found the coffee shop. It was not a deliberate choice. I had been working from Pax's apartment, but the light was bad, his building faced north, and I had a freelance deadline I could not miss. I packed my laptop and a sketchbook, the new one, the one with only 7 pages filled, and walked until I found a place with windows facing east. The coffee shop was small. Unremarkable. Tables along the wall, a counter with a pastry case that looked like it had been there since the 90s, and one corner table that caught the morning light exactly where I needed it. I claimed it. I did not look around to see if anyone else wanted it. I did not check if I was taking someone's usual spot. I just sat down, opened my laptop, and started working. It was the first time in weeks I had done something without first making sure it would not inconvenience anyone else. The man in the opposite corner had already been there when I arrived. I noticed him the way you notice furniture in a room you are not planning to stay in, present, but not relevant. He was working on something on his own laptop, a camera beside his coffee cup, lens cap off. His hands were steady. His coffee was black. He did not look up when I sat down. 2 days like that. 2 mornings of sharing a table without exchanging a word. On the 3rd morning, I opened my sketchbook while my coffee cooled. I had been working for 3 hours and my hand needed a break from the freelance piece. I started sketching the window, the way the light hit the glass, the faint reflection of the street outside, and I did not notice he was watching until he spoke. "May I?" His voice was quiet. Not tentative, careful. As if he knew that asking might break something fragile. I looked up. He was looking at my sketchbook, not at me. His hand was resting on his coffee cup, and he had slid it slightly toward my side of the table, as if offering a trade. I said yes before I had thought about it. He leaned forward, just slightly. He looked at the drawing for a long moment, and I braced myself for something careful. "That's interesting," but he did not say that. "It catches the light exactly the way it is," he said. "Not the way you think it should look. The way it actually is. That is harder than most people understand." I did not know what to say. I had never heard anyone describe my work that way. He sat back. "I'm Leander. Rafferty." "I know." I waited. "Your friend, Pax. He came by yesterday. He said you might be here." I did not know whether to be furious at Pax or grateful. I chose neither. I said, "His protective. He said you were a good artist." He undershot. Leander turned back to his laptop without another word. He did not ask to see more. He did not explain himself. He simply returned to his own work and left the space between us open, in case I wanted to fill it. I did not. Not yet. But I noticed, that morning, that he had left space beside him at the table. Turned slightly, not quite an invitation. Just space. I stopped pretending not to notice. 6 weeks after I left Corwin's penthouse, a package arrived at Pax's address. It was a Wednesday. I was at the coffee shop. Pax texted me, "Something came for you. Hand delivery. Looks important." I did not think much of it. I had been ordering art supplies online, replacing the things I had left behind, and I did not rush home. When I walked into the apartment that evening, the package was on the kitchen table. Brown paper. String. No return address. I knew before I opened it. My hands started shaking the same way they had the night I left. I stood very still and looked at the package and thought about what it might mean. Corwin had never been the type to return things. He did not believe in closure. Not really. He believed in moving forward, in not looking back, in leaving the past exactly where it was. He had sent them back. I opened the package slowly. The sketchbooks were inside. All of them. 7, total. The oldest one frayed at the edges, the newest one only half full. They were wrapped carefully, each one separated by tissue paper, as if the person who packed them understood that they mattered. I checked for a note. There was nothing from Corwin. But tucked inside the front cover of the oldest sketchbook, the one I had started the month I moved in with him, was a business card. Heavy paper. Simple type. Leander Bell. Brand strategy. On the back, in handwriting I did not recognize. He thought these should go home. I thought you should know someone delivered them. I read it 3 times. Then I understood. Leander had been the courier. Corwin had hired him, or asked him, to deliver the package to the address on file. Pax's address. And during the handoff, the sketchbooks had fallen open. Leander had looked. He had not been able to stop looking. He had left his card not because he expected anything, but because the work deserved acknowledgement from someone. I had been sitting across from this man at a coffee shop table every morning for 3 weeks without knowing any of this. I sat on Pax's couch and held the card and thought about the way Leander had said may I? Not about the coffee, about the work, and how he had looked at my drawing of the window and described it exactly the way it was. Not the way he wanted it to be. The way it actually was. He had already seen my work. He had already known, the first time he asked, what he was looking at. I did not know whether to be angry. I did not know whether to be grateful. I felt something else, something I did not have a name for yet. Not hope, not fear, not trust. Something quieter. Recognition. I turned the card over in my hand. I looked at the sketchbooks on the table, all of them, returned, proof that the person I was before Corwin still existed. Proof that someone had held them carefully enough to bring them home. I went to the coffee shop the next morning. Leander was at the table. I sat down. I put the card on the table between us, face up, without a word. He looked at it. He looked at me. His hands were steady on his coffee cup, and I could not tell if he was surprised or if he had known, from the moment I walked in, that this was coming. I wasn't sure if leaving that was the right thing to do, he said. It was. That was the moment the story changed. There are mornings that arrive without warning. This was not one of them. I had known, from the moment I found the card, that I would have to sit across from Leander and say something. I had not known what. I had practiced nothing. I had simply walked into the coffee shop, sat down, and put the card between us, and he had looked at it and said the exact thing I needed him to say. I wasn't sure if leaving that was the right thing to do. It was. That was all. We did not talk about it further that morning. He turned back to his laptop. I opened my sketchbook. The space between us was the same as it had been for 3 weeks, except now we both knew what it contained. He had seen my work before he had seen me. He had chosen to say something anyway. For the next 2 weeks, I drew him without meaning to. It started in the margins. A curve of a shoulder. The way he held his coffee cup, not wrapped around it, like most people, but balanced on his fingertips, as if he was testing its weight. The line of his jaw when he was reading something difficult on his screen. The slight tension that appeared and disappeared without him noticing. I did not realize I was doing it until Pax came home one evening, looked over my shoulder at the open sketchbook, and said, "That's the coffee shop guy." I closed the sketchbook too fast. "It's not. I was just practicing." "Raf, it's fine. You're drawing him because you're looking at him. That's how drawing works." I did not have an answer to that. The morning I caught myself, the morning I admitted it, I was sitting at the table and Leander was across from me, and I was drawing the way his hands moved when he talked about something he cared about. He was telling me about a brand strategy project he was working on, a small bakery that wanted to rebrand without losing the feel of the place, and he was using his hands to describe the shape of it, the curve of the counter, the way the light hit the display case, and I was drawing his hands without deciding to. He stopped talking. I looked up. He was looking at my sketchbook. I did not close it. I did not apologize. I just waited. He reached across the table and turned the sketchbook toward himself. Slowly, the way you turn a page you are not sure you are allowed to read. He looked at the drawing of his hands. He looked at the marginal sketches, the shoulder, the jaw, the coffee cup balanced on fingertips. He did not say anything. He turned the sketchbook back toward me, exactly the way it had been. And he continued his sentence about the bakery counter as if nothing had happened. That was when I understood. He already knew how to hold something carefully. Not by grabbing it. Not by asking for an explanation. By seeing it and not breaking it. I did not know, that morning, that I would show him Sienna's email before I showed Pax. It arrived on a Thursday. I was at the coffee shop, Leander was across from me, and my phone buzzed with a notification from an email address I did not recognize. The subject line was, Portfolio Inquiry, Sienna Cross, Cross Gallery. I almost deleted it. I had been getting spam since the breakup, newsletters I had signed up for years ago, promotional offers, the kind of email you open and immediately regret. But something about the name stopped me. Sienna Cross. I knew that name. She owned a gallery in the Arts District, the kind of space that showed work I had only ever dreamed of being near. I opened the email. Dear Rafferty, I have been following your portfolio online for 6 months. Your work has a quietness to it that I do not see often, a precision of attention that cannot be taught. I would like to offer you a solo exhibition at Cross Gallery this spring. Your work is ready. Are you? I read it 4 times. I did not tell Pax. I did not tell anyone. I looked up from my phone and Leander was watching me, his hand still on his keyboard, his expression unreadable. You look like someone just handed you something you did not expect, he said. I turned the phone toward him. He read it. He read it twice. Then he looked at me, and his voice was quieter than usual. Rafferty, this is... I know. A gallery. A real gallery. I know. He did not ask if I was going to say yes. He did not ask if I was ready. He said, what do you need? That was when I realized I had shown him first. Not Pax. Not the friend who had let me sleep on his couch for 6 weeks and made me dinner when I could not cook and told me I was still here when I could not see it myself. Leander. The man I had known for 5 weeks. The man who had carried my sketchbooks across the city and left his card inside the oldest one. I showed him first because I already knew what he would say. Not because he would tell me I was good. I did not need that, not from him. Because he would ask what I needed. And I had never had anyone ask me that before. What I needed. Not you should. Not this is a good opportunity. Not the careful silence of someone who did not want to say the wrong thing. What do you need? I told him the truth. I need to know if I am the person who shows up for this. He nodded. Once. You are. You don't know that. Yes, I do. I have seen your work. I have seen you sit at this table every morning and make something from nothing. That is the person who shows up. You have been showing up for weeks. You just did not know anyone was watching. The exhibition preparations took 3 months. I met with Sienna twice a week. She was exactly what her email suggested. Precise, direct, warm in a way that did not waste time. She looked at my sketchbooks, all of them, the ones that had been returned and the new ones I had been filling. And she did not say that's interesting. She said, this one, and this one, and this. The rest are practice. These are the ones that need to be seen. I learned to trust her eye. I learned to trust the process. I learned to sit with the terror of being seen and not run from it. Leander did not ask to see the exhibition before it opened. He did not ask for details. He just kept showing up at the coffee shop, kept leaving space beside him at the table, kept refilling my coffee when I was too deep in work to notice it had gone cold. He held the space. And I learned, slowly, what it meant to occupy it. The night before the exhibition, a letter arrived. It was in a cream envelope, my name on the front in handwriting I recognized instantly. Corwin's. He had always had the kind of handwriting that looked like it belonged on an invitation. Careful, deliberate, every letter formed with attention. I opened it standing in Pax's kitchen. The letter was handwritten. 4 pages. And it was, I realized as I read it, the most honest thing Corwin had ever written. He did not apologize for throwing me out. He apologized for everything before that, for the careful silences, the that's interestings, the way he had made my art feel like a hobby I should grow out of. He said he did not know he was doing it. He said that did not excuse it. He said he had returned the sketchbooks because he had found them in the bottom drawer of the desk in the 2nd bedroom, and he had opened one, and he had finally understood what he had been looking at for 3 years without seeing. You were making something beautiful in my house and I told you, in 1,000 small ways, that it was not enough. I was wrong. I am sorry I did not realize it while you were still there to hear it. I read it once. I folded it carefully. I put it in the oldest sketchbook, between 2 pages I had since filled. Not discarded. Not answered. Kept. Because it was true. And because I did not need to do anything with it. The gallery opened at 7. I arrived at 6:15 because Sienna had asked me to. Because she wanted to show me something before the doors opened. Because she had that look in her eye that meant she had done something she did not intend to explain. She met me at the door. She was wearing black, as always, and she had the pleased expression of someone who had arranged a surprise she was confident would land. Come here. I want to show you something before anyone else arrives. She led me through the gallery, past the first room, where my larger pieces hung in order of chronology, past the second room, where the newer work sat in conversation with itself, and into the third room, the one I had thought was going to be empty. It was not empty. On the far wall, beside my illustration of the coffee shop corner table, the one I had drawn on a morning when Leander had been late and I had not known what to do with the empty space across from me, hung a photograph. The same table. The same corner. The same early morning light. Empty. I knew who had taken it before I checked the label. Leander Bell. Coffee shop. 6:47 a.m. 2024. I stood very still and looked at the photograph and my illustration. Side by side. The same moment captured in 2 different languages. The same light. The same table. The same empty chair. We had not planned this. We had never discussed it. I had drawn the table because I had missed him. He had photographed it because what? Because he had seen something worth holding on to? Sienna was standing beside me, watching me watch the wall. It fit, she said. The moment I saw it, I knew it belonged here. You didn't tell me. No, I didn't. She waited. Do you want me to take it down? I thought about it. I thought about what it would mean to have his work in my exhibition, in my space, something he had made hanging beside something I had made without either of us planning it. I thought about how this was not a declaration. This was not a confession. This was Sienna, who knew more than she let on, putting 2 pieces of the same story next to each other and letting the audience decide what they meant. No, I said. Leave it. She nodded once. She walked away to check the wine glasses. I stood alone in the third room, looking at a table I had drawn and a table he had photographed, and I did not know yet what this morning would mean. I only knew that he had seen what I saw. That we had both sat in that spot and looked at the same empty space and chosen to hold on to it. The doors opened. People came. More than I expected. Sienna had sent invitations to people I had never met. Gallery owners, collectors, critics, the kind of people who made careers feel real or unreal depending on what they wrote afterward. I shook hands and said thank you and tried not to panic. Pax arrived early. He hugged me without saying anything, which was exactly what I needed, and then he walked through the gallery with his hands in his pockets, looking at every piece slowly, the way you look at something you want to understand. When he reached the third room, he stopped. Yes. That's the coffee shop. The one you sit in every morning. Yes. He looked at the photograph. He looked at the illustration. He looked at me. Raf, where did he get this? I don't know. I didn't know he took it. Pax looked at the wall for a long time. Then he said, very quietly, he was watching. Not in a weird way. He was paying attention. The same way you pay attention when you draw something. He was seeing it. I did not know what to say to that. I still did not know when Leander arrived. I felt him before I saw him. That is not ABO instinct. Not exactly. It was something quieter. A shift in the air of the room. The way the light changes when a cloud passes and you do not notice it until it is gone. I was standing in the second room, talking to someone whose name I had already forgotten, and I looked up and he was there. Leander. At the entrance to the gallery. His camera was around his neck. He was wearing the same jacket he always wore, the one with the pocket on the left side where he kept his lens cap. He looked like he was not sure he was allowed to be here. I excused myself. I walked toward him. The room was full of people and I walked through them without seeing any of them. And when I reached him I did not say what I had planned. I had not planned anything, I said. You came. You have an exhibition. Of course I came. The photograph. In the third room. He did not pretend to misunderstand. I took it the morning you were late. You had never been late before. I did not know if you were coming back to the coffee shop. I did not want to ask, so I took a picture of the table instead. That is the most Leander thing I have ever heard. He almost smiled. Is that a compliment? I do not know yet. He looked at me. His hands were still, and I realized I had never seen him nervous before. He was always the one who held the space, who left the chair open, who said may I, with the careful voice of someone who knew how easily things could break. He was nervous now. 6 weeks, he said. I sat across from you for 6 weeks before I told you who I was. I do not know if that was wrong. I do not know if I should have led with the card. But I did not want you to look at me and see a delivery man. I wanted you to see someone who recognized what he was looking at. I thought about the first time he had said may I? Not about the coffee, about the work. I thought about the way he had described my drawing of the window. Not the way you think it should look. The way it actually is. I thought about the sketchbooks, returned, wrapped carefully, as if the person who packed them understood that they mattered. I had thought that was Corwin's care. It was not. It was Leander's. You were the one who wrapped them, I said. Not Corwin. You. I packed them. He gave them to me to deliver. But he did not look at them. Rafferty. He handed me the package and said take this to this address and that was all. But the package was not sealed. It fell open in my car. And I looked, and I could not stop looking, and I wrapped them again myself. Carefully. Because they deserved that. I stood in the middle of my exhibition, surrounded by people who had come to see my work, and I understood that the most important thing that had happened to me in the past 6 months was not the exhibition. It was not the letter from Corwin. It was not the return of the sketchbooks. It was this man, who had seen my work before he had seen my face, and who had chosen to sit beside me anyway. The night ended late. People left. Sienna shook my hand and said, very quietly, the third room is the one people are talking about. You know that, right? I know. Good. She left. Pax left. The gallery went quiet, and I stood alone in the third room, looking at the illustration and the photograph, the same table seen by 2 people at different times. Rafferty. I turned. Leander was still there. He was standing at the entrance to the room, his camera in his hands, his jacket still on. I wanted to ask you something, he said, but I do not know if it is the right time. Ask anyway. Tomorrow morning. The coffee shop. Same table. Do you want to share it? I looked at him. He was standing in the doorway of a gallery where my work hung, and he was asking me, carefully, quietly, if I would choose to sit beside him tomorrow. Not today. Not forever. Tomorrow. The same question he had been asking every morning for months, in every gesture that was not quite an invitation. May I? Yes, I said. I would. He nodded once. He did not smile. He did not reach for me. He just said, good. I will leave the space open. And he walked out into the night. I stood alone in the third room, looking at a table I had drawn and a table he had photographed, and I understood that this was not the end of the story. This was the beginning of something I was finally ready to occupy. That night, I went home to Pax's apartment and sat on the couch with the oldest sketchbook on my lap. I opened it. I took out Corwin's letter, folded, 4 pages, the most honest thing he had ever written, and I read it one more time. Then I put it back between 2 pages I had since filled. Pages that belonged to the new life. Pages that Leander had seen before anyone else. I closed the sketchbook. I thought about the light in the coffee shop. The way it hit the table at 6:47. The way I had chosen that table because the light was good, and I had never looked for anything better because I had stopped believing I deserved it. I was not that person anymore. I had not become someone different overnight. I had become someone different the way a line becomes a shape. Slowly, one mark at a time, until you look up and realize you have drawn something you did not know you were capable of seeing. Tomorrow morning, I would sit at a table with a man who had already seen me. And I would let myself be seen. The morning after the exhibition, I arrived at the coffee shop at 6:30. I did not plan it. I woke up before my alarm, lay in the dark for 10 minutes, and then got dressed and walked there because lying still felt like something I had already done enough of. The city was quiet. The light was grey, not yet gold, and the coffee shop was empty except for the barista who was already wiping down the counter. I sat at the corner table. Not the one I used to sit at, the one I had claimed because the light was good, but the one Leander always chose. The one with the space beside it that he left open. I ordered black coffee. I added sugar when the barista was not watching. And I waited. He arrived at 6:47. I knew the time because I looked at my phone when the door opened. I did not plan to check. I just wanted to know, later, what time it had been when he walked in and saw me sitting at his table. He stopped at the entrance. His camera was around his neck. His hands were in his pockets. He looked at me sitting at the table that had been his, in the seat that had been his, and I watched him decide what to do with that information. He walked over. He did not sit across from me. He sat beside me, in the space he always left open, the space I had only ever filled by accident. He set his coffee down. He took off his lens cap. He did not say anything. I did not say anything either. We sat like that for a long time, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10, in the kind of silence that does not need to be filled. The coffee shop was filling up around us. People came in, ordered, sat at other tables. The light shifted from grey to gold, hitting the edge of the table exactly where I remembered it always did. Leander reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a photograph. It was the same one from the exhibition. The table, the light, the empty chair. He set it on the table between us, facing me. I printed it for you, he said. I did not know if you would want it, but I thought, if you did, you should have your own copy. I picked it up. It was smaller than I expected, a 5x7, the kind of print you can hold in one hand. The light was exactly as I remembered it. The chair was empty. The table was waiting. I have been sitting at that table every morning for 5 months, I said. I chose it because the light was good. I stayed because I stopped. Because someone left space beside him. And I did not know if it was for me, but I wanted to find out. Leander looked at me. His hands were still. His coffee was cooling beside him. And he said, in the quiet voice he used when he was saying something that mattered, "It was always for you." The story does not end there. That is not how stories like this work. There is no moment where everything resolves and the credits roll and you walk away knowing exactly how it all turned out. But there is a moment where you know, not because someone tells you, but because you feel it settle, that something has changed. That was the moment. We stayed at the coffee shop until noon. We talked about the exhibition, which pieces people had stopped at, which ones they had walked past, which room Sienna had arranged exactly right. Leander told me about the photograph, how he had taken it on a morning when I was late and he had been afraid I was not coming back. I told him about the drawing, how I had drawn the table because I did not know what to do with the empty space across from me. He said, "You could have sat somewhere else." I said, "I know." He said, "But you stayed." I said, "I did." That afternoon, I went back to Pax's apartment and packed my sketchbooks. Not all of them. Just the ones I had filled since the breakup. The new ones. The ones that started with a single shaky line on a blank page and ended with a drawing of a man's hands balanced on a coffee cup. I put them in a canvas bag. I took them to Sienna's gallery, because she had asked if she could keep them on display for another week, because people kept calling and asking to see more. She met me at the door. "You look different," she said. "I am different." She nodded. She took the bag. She looked at me for a moment, and then she said, "The photograph. In the 3rd room. Your friend bought it." I stopped. "Leander?" "No. The other one. The one who arrived late and stood in the corner for an hour without talking to anyone. He bought it this morning. He asked me to tell you that he knows he cannot get it back. He just wanted you to know that it mattered." I stood very still. Corwin. He had come to the exhibition. He had seen the photograph. He had bought it, not the illustration, not one of the larger pieces, but the photograph. The one of the empty table. I did not know what to do with that. I did not have to know yet. 3 weeks later, Sienna called and asked if I would be interested in a second exhibition. Not a solo show, a joint one. 2 artists. 2 walls. 1 room. She had already asked Leander. He had said yes, if I said yes. I said yes. We spent the next 2 months working in the same room. Not the coffee shop, Sienna's back studio, the one she used for visiting artists. 2 desks. 2 windows. 1 wall that we filled with sketches and test prints and notes that neither of us organized. Pax came by once, saw the chaos, and said, "You two are disgusting." I mean that as a compliment. I did not know what we were. I still do not have a word for it. Not partners, not yet. Not friends, that was not the right shape either. Something in between. Something that was growing its own form. All I knew was that I woke up every morning and went to a room where someone was waiting, and I drew, and he photographed, and we did not have to explain ourselves to each other. That was enough. The joint exhibition opened in the spring. There was no single moment that night where everything changed. No speech. No confession. No kiss in front of the wall where our work hung side by side. But there was a moment, near the end of the night, when the gallery had emptied and Sienna had gone home and Pax had hugged me goodbye and it was just us. Leander was standing in front of a photograph he had taken of me. The first one he had ever taken of a person. He had told me, not a place, not an object, a person, and I was standing beside him. Rafferty. Yeah. He turned to look at me. The light in the gallery was low. His hands were still. I don't know what I'm doing, he said. I've never done this before. I don't mean the exhibition. I mean, this. Us. Whatever this is. I have spent my whole life watching things from a distance. I have never been good at stepping into the frame. I looked at him. At the man who had carried my sketchbooks across the city and left his card inside the oldest one. Who had said may I? Meaning the work, meaning my attention, meaning everything. Who had left space beside him at a table for weeks before I worked up the nerve to sit in it. You have been stepping into the frame since the moment you said my work deserved acknowledgement, I said. You just did not know you were doing it. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Is that okay?" Yeah, it's okay. It's more than okay. He did not reach for me. I did not reach for him. We stood side by side, looking at a wall full of work that told the story of 2 people learning to be seen. And that was enough. That was everything. The next morning, I woke up early and walked to the coffee shop. The light was good. The corner table was empty. I sat down. I ordered black coffee. I added sugar when the barista was not watching. At 6:47, the door opened. Leander walked in. He saw me sitting at the table. He did not stop at the entrance this time. He walked over. He sat beside me. And he left space, as always, in case I needed it. There is a version of this story that ends at the exhibition. 2 men standing side by side in front of a wall that holds the proof of what they have been building. The light is low. The room is empty. Something has been said without being spoken. But that is not where it ends. Not quite. The morning after the joint exhibition, I woke up at Pax's apartment and lay still for a long time. The ceiling was the same ceiling I had been staring at for 8 months. The light through the window was the same grey morning light I had learned to wake to. But something was different. I had shown my work. I had been seen. I had sat beside a man who had carried my sketchbooks across the city before he ever knew my name. And I had not run. That was the part that surprised me. I had expected, at some point, to feel the familiar pull toward disappearance. The instinct to make myself smaller, to stop taking up space, to apologize for existing in a way that required someone else to adjust. It had been my default for so long that I had started to think of it as part of my personality. Not a wound. Just who I was. But I had not run. I had stayed at the table. I had shown Leander the email before I showed Pax. I had put Corwin's letter in the oldest sketchbook, not as a reminder of what I had lost, but as a record of what I had survived. I had chosen myself. Not once. Many times. In small ways that added up to something I could not ignore. I went to the coffee shop that morning, but I did not sit at the corner table. I sat at a different one. The one by the window, where the light hit differently, where I had never sat before because I had always assumed it was someone else's spot. Leander arrived at 6:47. He saw me at the new table. He did not hesitate. He walked over and sat across from me. "You changed seats," he said. "I wanted to see what the light was like over here. And it's good. Different, but good." He nodded. He set his camera on the table, lens cap off. He did not ask if I was coming back to the old table. He just sat in the new spot, with me, and let the morning light fall where it wanted to fall. That afternoon, I went to the gallery to pick up the remaining sketchbooks. Sienna was in her office, reading something on her phone. She looked up when I walked in and said, without preamble, I had an offer on the illustration of the coffee shop table. I stopped. From who? Someone who did not want to be named. They offered double the asking price. I told them it was not for sale. It was for sale. Everything was for sale. Not that one. She looked at me. That one belongs to you. I did not know what to say. I had never thought of my work as something that could belong to me. I had always drawn it, finished it, and moved on. The idea that something I had made could be kept, not sold, not displayed, but kept, felt foreign. Like a language I had not learned to speak. "Thank you," I said. It was not a favor. It was a judgment. "That piece is not ready to leave you yet." I did not ask what she meant. I think I knew. I found Pax that evening in his kitchen, making dinner. He did not look up when I walked in. He just said, "You look different." Everyone keeps saying that. Because it's true. You stopped shrinking. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where I had sat with a blank page for 4 days, unable to draw, convinced that I had lost the only part of myself that mattered. The table where I had learned to make a line again. "I think I'm going to move out," I said. Pax stopped chopping vegetables. He turned to look at me. "To where?" "I don't know yet. Somewhere with good light." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You know you can stay here as long as you need." "I know. That's why I can leave." He nodded. He turned back to the vegetables. He did not say anything else, because he did not need to. He had been telling me I was still here for 8 months. He had known, long before I did, that I would eventually believe it. I found an apartment 3 weeks later. It was small. 1 bedroom. A kitchen that opened into the living room. And a window that faced east, catching the morning light exactly where I needed it. I signed the lease on a Tuesday. I moved my things, the sketchbooks, the clothes, the duffel I had arrived with, on a Saturday. Pax helped me carry the boxes. He did not say much. He did not need to. When the last box was inside, he stood in the empty living room and looked around. "The light is good," he said. "Yeah, that's why I chose it." He hugged me, briefly, firmly, the way he had always hugged me, even before everything. "You're going to be okay, Raf." "I know." He left. I stood in my apartment, and looked at the light on the empty floor. I invited Leander over the next morning. Not for anything specific. I just wanted him to see it. To see that I had chosen a place with good light. To see that I was staying. He arrived at 9 a.m. with his camera and 2 cups of coffee from the coffee shop. He handed me one. He walked to the window and looked out. "The light is good," he said. That is what I said. It is what we both say. We are the kind of people who notice light. I did not have an answer to that. He was right. He set his coffee on the windowsill. He took a photograph of the light hitting the floor. I watched him do it, and I thought about how strange it was, that I had met this man because my sketchbooks fell open in his car, that he had seen my work before he had seen my face. That he had left his card inside the oldest one because he thought the work deserved acknowledgement. That he had been sitting at the table beside me the entire time, waiting for me to notice that the space was open. "You should hang something on that wall," he said, gesturing to the blank space above the window. "I don't have anything to hang." He was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his bag and pulled out a print. The same print he had given me before. The coffee shop table. The empty chair. The early morning light. "You could start with this," he said, "if you want." I took it from him. I held it in my hands and looked at the photograph that had been hanging in Sienna's gallery. The one that people kept stopping at. The one that Corwin had bought and could not get back. The one that belonged to me now. "Help me hang it," I said. We hung it together. It took 3 tries to get it straight. Leander was particular about alignment. I was not, but I pretended to be, because watching him adjust the frame by millimeters was something I wanted to remember. When it was finally straight, we stood side by side and looked at it. The table. The light. The empty chair. I did not feel empty when I looked at it anymore. I felt something else. Something I had been learning to name. Belonging. Not to a person. Not to a place. To the fact that I had stayed. That I had kept drawing. That I had let someone see me without running. "I think this is the beginning," I said. Leander looked at me. "Of what?" "Of whatever comes next. I don't know what it is yet. But I think I am finally ready to find out." He did not say anything. He just stood beside me, in the morning light, in a room I had chosen for myself. And that was enough. That was everything. I still sit at the coffee shop every morning. Sometimes at the corner table. Sometimes by the window. Leander still arrives at 6:47, his camera around his neck, his hand steady on his coffee cup. Sometimes we talk. Sometimes we do not. Sometimes he takes a photograph. Sometimes I draw him, a curve of his shoulder, the way he holds his cup, the line of his jaw when he is reading something difficult. I do not hide the sketchbook anymore. I let him see. Because being held carefully is not the same as being held. And I have learned, finally, the difference. End of story. I still think about Corwin sometimes. Not in the way I used to. Not with the ache of someone who had been made small. I think about him the way you think about a door you closed a long time ago. You know it is there. You do not need to open it. His letter is still in the oldest sketchbook, between 2 pages I have since filled. I do not take it out. I do not add to it. It is exactly where it belongs, in the record of who I was, closed, kept, no longer active. The sketchbooks themselves are on a shelf in my apartment, near the window where the light is good. Sometimes I open one and look at the old drawings. The ones I made when I was still learning to exist in a room without apologizing. The ones I made when I was figuring out what it meant to take up space. I can see the change in them. The lines get steadier. The spaces get wider. The silence between marks gets comfortable. That is what healing looks like, I think. Not a single dramatic moment. Not a declaration. Just the slow accumulation of days where you keep showing up, keep drawing, keep letting yourself be seen. And someone beside you, leaving the space open.